Welcome to the I Am One podcast, where we talk to perinatal mental health advocates, professionals, and educators supporting the mission of Postpartum Support International. We're not afraid to ask our guests about the hardest parts of pregnancy and postpartum because we know that PSI has tools and resources to help in every situation, and everyone should know about them.
Whether you are among the 1 in 5 moms, 1 in 10 dads, one of many trans or non-binary parents, or you're one professional or advocate committed to helping folks in need, you are also one of us.
I'm your host, Danny Giddens, and I am 1 in 5. I didn't know what to call what I was experiencing after becoming a parent and felt too scared at the time to speak up.
Not anymore. Now she won't stop talking about it. Hi, I'm your co-host, Emily Jankowski. I'm also 1 in 5, and I want you to know that mental health complications are common, but they aren't normal.
There's something powerful in knowing I am one of many. Whether you're already connected to the perinatal mental health world, looking for new ways to support parents and families, or just want to hang out with us in your earbuds, we are so glad that you tuned in.
Of course they want to hang out with us. We're lovely. Seriously, though, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this pod are the speaker's own. Tuning into this podcast is, spoiler alert, not a replacement for therapy, but PSI can help you find a therapist. We could also help you find a psychiatrist, a support group, or Waldo.
Emily, Waldo? Come on! We don't know where Waldo is.
Okay, fine. PSI help seekers can find peer support and resources in their area.
At PSI, we want you to know you are not alone, you are not to blame, and with help, you will be well. On today's episode, we're sitting down with the one, the only Dr. Kaeni. She's a perinatal mental health certified clinical psychologist, the current PSI Board Chair, a published author, a podcast host extraordinaire coming up on 350 episodes, and an overall incredible human being. Kat is involved in a lot these days. We are just so grateful for this conversation about parenting through the filter of anxiety, how she got involved volunteering with PSI, and the role that vulnerability plays in healing and doing the kind of impactful work that makes a huge difference in this world. So without any further ado, please enjoy this episode with our friend, Dr. Kat. Dr. Kat, welcome to the podcast studio.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is such a great way to spend our Friday, sitting here and getting to chat about all things perinatal mental health with you. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I'm so happy you guys are doing this. Just the podcast in general.
We are too.
Now, Kat, I didn't discuss this with you in advance, okay? But I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but I think I need you to put your imagination hat on just for a hot second.
Okay.
Mine's on. Is yours on?
Okay. Let's see if my lion's mane has kicked in yet this morning. Okay. Let's go.
Okay. We are going to imagine for a hot minute here that some of our listeners don't know who you are.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That's a bit of a stretch. Now I know where we're going with this.
Yes. Hard to believe. I am wondering, can you give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are?
Absolutely. Why, thank you for asking. Professionally, I go by Dr. Kat. My full name is Kaeni, which is a mouthful for some.
Try harder, some.
Right. So at this point in time, I'm a clinical psychologist. I specialize in perinatal mental health. I am the board chair of Postpartum Support International, this beautiful organization that we are all a part of. And that's a volunteer position. And I've been volunteering with PSI since 2014. So it's been 10 years.
Wow.
I guess.
Happy 10-year anniversary, Kat.
I think it's the fall of 24. So.
Oh, never mind. I rescind that.
Yeah, take it back.
Too soon.
Right. That's what I'm doing now. I'm a psychologist. I meet with folks for therapy. That's my primary gig. And then all the chair responsibilities, and also host the Mom and Mind podcast.
You host a podcast?
Hang on, wait a second. I should write that down. I might have some interesting things.
We should listen to that.
Mom
yeah, you should.
Mind.
Let's see. Episode 314 just launched yesterday.
Damn. Goals.
It's a lot of episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of episodes. I'll hit my 8-year anniversary in June.
You've been doing it for 8 years. Holy smokes. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did like 30 in the last year.
That's awesome. It's as you know, like it takes some getting used to, getting the flow, figuring things out.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that for a hot minute. It's pretty cool. I get to talk to a lot of people, you guys included,
Yes.
listen to people sharing their personal stories, and also have experts on to talk about different specific conditions like depression or postpartum anxiety or postpartum psychosis. And recently I started a separate series within the podcast where I talk about just stuff that comes up in therapy. Behind the sessions.
Behind the sessions. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So that's fun. So every other Thursday, those behind the sessions episodes come out, and every Monday, an episode comes out of the kind of regular deal.
Great. Well, we'll put a link to your podcast and your website in the show notes.
Okay, cool.
But
Obvi.
Duh. But I think we need to like time travel a little bit. If we can go back in time, can we ask you, Kat, what role perinatal mental health complications have played in your life personally? We kind of know professionally, like that you're supporting folks in the perinatal period.
But how did you get here?
Yeah. Let's get personal.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's dig in. My daughter will be 14 in June, and her post-birth was my entrance into perinatal mental health, into this whole world. I was already a psychologist. I had been practicing for a bit, working in a, big old medical system and helping people just as a generalist for the most part. And I didn't really know anything about perinatal mental health or really what it was until after I had my daughter, and very quickly started experiencing anxiety. I didn't know it at the time, what it was. I just thought, wow, this is tough, and I'm not going to tell anybody about it. And then it got a lot harder pretty quickly. My symptoms really started to intensify over time with the less sleep I got.
As it does. Yeah.
As it does. And the more complexity my life had, like returning to work and those kinds of things, just everything started to compile. And at around the year mark is when I finally had a sit down with myself to really figure out what was going on. Because I knew that something wasn't right, but I didn't want to know that something wasn't right. And so I gave myself the PHQ-9, which is a depression screen. It's one I was giving to people every single day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, we got to like really be honest here. And because, it's easy to talk yourself out of like, oh, it's fine. I'm fine. If I just get to a little more sleep, or if I just get to this milestone, everything will be okay. And it wasn't. It got a lot worse. So I was anxious. I started to become really depressed. This is throughout that first year. And then I did develop postpartum OCD, and I was having a lot of intrusive thoughts and a lot of obsessive worry and compulsive behaviors to try and manage the intensity and overwhelm of all of that. But I was so good at pretending that I was fine and I could manage it that really nobody knew. It was like an internal hell that nobody really knew about. Maybe in some ways that I was like irritable or agitated, or, in those ways that maybe my husband, was seeing, but wasn't something that I was really sharing with other people. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was there a moment or like a tipping point that led to this like sit down with yourself? Or was it just sort of like everything had like the laundry pile had gotten so big that you could no longer like get through the metaphorical living room of your life, and you were like, well, I guess I have to address this now? Like, was there a moment, or was it just
like we're out of socks and underwear? Guess it's time to do laundry.
It's time to do laundry.
Yeah.
I had 365 pairs of underwear, it turns out.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it was more of an accumulation. Like I knew something wasn't right. And I knew that I was suffering. And I was afraid of what that meant, especially as a therapist and as a, psychologist and all these titles and stuff. I didn't know too much, but I also didn't know anything about this.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets tricky is, I'm supposed to, quote unquote, I'm supposed to know about these things, but I don't know. Nobody trained me on this. It wasn't a discussion anywhere. It lasted for a really long time. And I was for sure suffering for a very long time and in really intense ways. I don't know. It was just one of those things, like things had built up and I was in my office feeling like garbage and sitting there by myself, like trying not to cry and crying anyways. And, all of that.
Yeah.
So I just was like, I got to look at this head on. And that was, I needed something objective, like outside of my head to tell me, like, girl, you're not feeling as well as you think you should be. So
that's why you pulled out the PHQ-9.
Mm-hmm.
So the PHQ-9 does not lie. I mean, if you answer it correctly. I mean,
if you're honest, it doesn't lie.
If you're honest. So you looked at that and it was pretty clear that something was going on for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to talk to myself about answering it honestly, because I'd filled that out before postpartum. Thankfully, I was in a system that did assess for postpartum depression, but that was, 6 weeks in and maybe like a couple months later. And I remember it was at least the second time I filled it out. I knew that I wasn't being honest.
Mm-hmm.
But there was like it's almost like this other part of me that knew I wasn't being honest, but also didn't want to admit to myself that something was wrong.
Yeah, that part of yourself that was already capable of performing because you were actively performing fine, was like, we're fine. Shh, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd had plenty of practice at performing fine before any of this happened.
Oh, proficient.
For lots of other reasons. What's that?
You were proficient in performing fine.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It's a skill.
It is.
It is a skill.
That no one should ever have to have, okay?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, childhood trauma.
It's an extra 3 letters at the end of Kat's name, PPF, proficient in performing fine.
Yeah.
Proficient at performing fine.
PPF.
Yeah.
Okay, so you identified yourself as suffering from depression, anxiety, and OCD. Did you then seek help? Did you get diagnosed officially from an outside observer, an unbiased third party?
Yes, to the first question. Yes, I did seek help, but no, I didn't get a diagnosis. I went to a therapist that I had seen previously. And the one memory of this one particular session where I told them, I think I'm depressed. And they said, no, you're not, essentially.
What?
And I was like, okay. And I just shut down and kind of stopped going shortly after that. I don't know what else they were thinking, really, because there wasn't like a further questioning or wondering. I mean, they didn't specialize in this. So I thought, okay, well, I got to figure something out. So I went to a naturopathic doctor. I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something with my hormones, or like it was something that I knew, but somebody then told me no. And so I started trying to figure all this other stuff out. So I went to a naturopathic doctor. I did acupuncture. I did all these other supportive processes, which were helpful and useful. But there was one time I remember I was so desperate that like I almost felt like I had this negative energy following me. It just felt so heavy all the time. And I was living in San Francisco all the time at that time. So as you can imagine, there was a crystal shop there. That was like close to my house. So anyways, I was walking by and I was sort of like drawn in, and I was like, sort of like, what can I do? I need something to help this. Like, so I was like talking to the lady who owned the shop about, what I was feeling like. And so she was just giving me some stones and crystals to hold on to. And man, did I hold on to those. It was like, I literally needed something to hold on to that felt like something I was doing to help myself feel better. After that, I went to an energy healer, which was more of like a craniosacral therapist.
Oh,
and
yeah, that's good stuff.
there was a lot of like meditative, body-centered healing work, which was good for me because I get really heady and I needed someone to be like, no, girl, we're going to bypass that and get to some deeper stuff.
Yeah.
So in combination, all of that was helpful. Plus then learning more about perinatal mental health. And I got this pregnancy postpartum anxiety workbook. And I was reading through it. And as soon as I read through the like symptoms of OCD, I was like, ugh. I just, started crying because I'm like, holy mother of pearl, that's what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
And those types of intrusive thoughts are a thing. Like it was super, just this moment of, okay, it's not just me. It's not just me in my head. This is a thing that other people experience. And from that point on, like really understanding what it was that I was going through, that's when I started my path into specializing.
Got it.
Wow.
So when did you get involved with PSI then? Were you like, when did you slide into our DMs?
I in 2014 actually was when I started volunteering for PSI. That was a year after my son was born. So I had a little bit of perinatal mental health stuff after him too, but I was already specializing, so I knew better what to look out for and what to do. But prior to PSI, there was another organization that was leading the climb, and I was part of those climbs for 2 to 3 years.
That's right.
And
we led climbs together.
Yeah. Back in the day, way back in the day. But then I hooked up with PSI to start. It was after I did the 2-day training, like a couple years after I did the 2-day training, to just be more involved and provide local support. So I was a coordinator here in my area for 4 years, I think, something like that. That sounds right. Maybe 2. Thanks, memory. So I was volunteering and then I got more and more involved in not just local volunteering, but I got involved in helping create the certification exam. And that was awesome. And then I got invited to be on the board, and that was great. And then onto the executive committee for the board, and then to board chair. So that's been my trajectory over the last 10 years. Loads of PSI involvement.
Yeah. We are very lucky to have you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
You have told this story multiple times, right? Like this is not your first time sharing your lived experience with anyone. No. I've shared it on my podcast. I'm pretty open about it. I tend to be a pretty open book about it because stigma, and if I can share my story and it helps somebody else, then that's what we do here.
I
right?
think that is such an important point though, because for example, when I first discovered that there's like a whole world of perinatal mental health advocates and professional supporting folks in the perinatal period, I just thought like, oh my gosh, I want to know more. And so one of our friends is an advocate and, runs a support group in town. And I'm like, what should I be reading? Like, what should I be listening to? And this is where Kat slides into my orbit. She was like, well, you've got to listen to Mom in Mind. And I just remember like bombing through like so many of your episodes, and you were talking about how when you read the symptoms for OCD or, other diagnoses, you were like, okay, that sounds like what I've got going on. Well, I also didn't speak to anybody when I became a mom because, I was experiencing anxiety and depression and OCD, but I was like horrified and thought it was like a character flaw. And I was like, what does this mean about me? It doesn't mean anything. This is like something that Kat and Wendy talked about at the New Orleans conference. They had a really great breakout session about like, it's not like what's wrong with me, but what's going on for me. And that has like stuck with me for a long time. So it's just important to remember that, like, that just because you're feeling really big things, it's not like we've got a character flaw. It's like, okay, there's a lot going on for me, right?
Yeah.
It's so important to hear people's stories. And so that's what we're doing here. It was like me listening to your podcast was like an opportunity for me to hear people talk about things, especially, Kat, there's an episode that you talked about your experience about having, some thoughts that really like
Freaked me out.
you freaked you out. Yeah. I was trying to think of the right adjective.
They were scary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, I was witnessing, well, through my ears, like hearing somebody say the things that they were feeling and like seeing that it's okay to talk about those things. Another one of our friends was on a podcast episode, and that's like, podcast, man. Like, you got to share your stories. I heard her speaking about her experience with postpartum anxiety and depression and OCD, and I was like, okay, so like that's how you do it. Okay. Like, it gave me some encouragement to like maybe like mention something during a conversation with a friend instead of not saying anything at all because I was too scared about what it meant about me.
Yeah.
Like, it's the whole point is like that if you have experienced any of these types of things postpartum or like, while you're pregnant, like you're one of like many people that experience perinatal mental health complications, and like you're not alone in this, and hence the title of the podcast.
It's super important because, right, I mean, it like I felt and like you felt and a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell anybody. Really. I mean, maybe you might drop some hints here and there, say some little sliver of what your internal experience was like. But for me, it felt like torture inside. It was horrible. I wasn't going to tell anybody that that's what it felt like, or that those were the thoughts, the intensity of the thoughts that I was having.
Was it all gamed out in your head? Like, if I say something, then I'm not going to be allowed to like be in like the adult in charge of my baby? Or like, were you worried about what would happen if you said the things out loud? Or
it's interesting because it didn't have like a like they're going to take my baby away or anything like that. I don't know if I can describe it the way it felt, but there was so much shame associated with it. It was like embarrassing, but like shameful embarrassment. That, I mean, I guess part of the way I think about it is like I think about a lot of people's stuff as a therapist anyways. It's like, you're having this experience now and it sucks and it's horrible and all of that. But what is being picked up from previous life experience and trauma that's getting like mixed into this? So my narrative, especially at that time, the internal narrative and from my earlier childhood experiences, my internalized voice is never being good enough. So if I'm now as a parent not good enough at this too, then it's like so much heavier, because I'm not like in current time thinking to myself, well, I feel like I'm not good enough because that's how I felt like in childhood. And blah, blah. Like, you're not thinking it. You're just picking up the same or some of the same emotional intensity that you used to have. And it's getting folded all into this new life experience. Everything's new. You're learning a new job. You're at your like most vulnerable, especially in terms of not knowing something. And you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Maybe something, but not enough for you to feel competent. And right. So like, that's where things got really tricky, is where my previous traumas got activated. I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, trying to do daily stuff with my kid and thinking about all of these ways that I was potentially failing. Now I know. Now now with all of my own therapy and my own work and whatever. But even like early on in the early years, I didn't fully understand how my internalized narrative was impacting me as a new parent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that's so true. Like, to me, it's like, I'm thinking about it. It's the combination of like it's like you're a little bumblebee and you've got like little bits of pollen still on, right? Like You're not covered in it because you've flown away from that flower.
Mm-hmm.
You got a little bit. And now you're in this new experience and it's still there a little.
Yep.
And all you need is like the magnifier of depression or anxiety or OCD, which every time I'm reminded, which happens at least once or twice a week in the last many years, that like OCD can be something that's mostly happening in your brain and not like a physical behavior.
Right.
Yes.
Every time I remember that, I'm like, oh, it's just so insidious. Like,
because there's no like checks and balances. It's just you in there swimming around with all this stuff.
Yeah.
Unless, that's why therapy is good and whatever, you get it checked out, or somebody that you like trust and love who can like really hold space with you, doesn't have to be a therapist, and kind of help you get that in check a little bit. But when it's like you yourself and you in there and it's just running rampant, it just becomes overwhelming in and of itself and starts to snowball.
Yeah.
Did you go back to therapy after, like, maybe not to this same therapist, but like, so you have this experience with this therapist that's like not great, maybe because that therapist didn't have the skill set. Go to the trainings, people, that they needed. And so now, like, did you revisit therapy, and what was that like? Give me the scoop.
Yeah. So I revisited therapy a little bit later. It was like a trauma got triggered, essentially, a little bit, like a couple years after. And I was like, oh, I gotta go deal with this. Yeah. So I did. I found a therapist who specialized in EMDR. The thing that triggered me was like a mishmash of things that included some of the trauma from postpartum, but it was a lot focused around my daughter, like worrying that something bad would happen to her. I mean, there's like so many different things that went into this particular trigger, but
as they do.
Yeah, right. They just pick up stuff along the way and they're like, I'm going to add this onto the pile.
You know what?
Yeah, get on
the party.
Get on board.
More the merrier.
Yep. So I did. I went back to therapy and met with a therapist who did EMDR. So we worked through some of that trauma there for years.
Was
for some
that
years.
Helpful?
Yes, absolutely. For sure. It was very helpful.
Intense?
And yeah. So, I mean, I'm a therapist and I believe that other therapists should go to therapy too. So, I mean, my relationship with therapy is that I'm going to go off and on forever. It's just part of maintenance and self-care. And like even with whatever, all the healing and work and stuff that I've done, there will be times where something will come up, or my kid is in a new developmental phase, but it'll kind of sort of harken back to something that came up when they were, for me, when they were younger, and be like, oh gosh, that still feels like a little bit of pain right there. Most often for me, that happens with not feeling super connected to my daughter when she was born and throughout that first year. And like, oh my gosh, does that mean X, Y, or Z? So that those like feelings will still come up. I mean, we're cool. We're good.
Okay.
And connected and bonded.
Except for the fact that she's 14. Are you okay?
Yeah. Yeah. We both have 14-year-olds.
Oh, yikes. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. No, we're cool. She's great. And, but every once in a while those questions still come up, like, oh, is it because is like this particular interaction we're having right now as a 14, like as she's a 14-year-old or almost 14, because of that like year where I was so anxious, it was hard for me to connect with her. I loved her so much, and it was hard for me to feel bonded to her because I was so afraid and taking care of her like through the filter of anxiety all the time. So it didn't feel like connection, even though we were. So I'm like, okay, here we are. She's like giving me some attitude or something like now. Like,
is this because of those 9 months where I was only focused on?
Yeah. Where I was like terrified all the time. I wonder if that was it.
Can you say that again? You said something about taking care of her through the anxiety. I want to know more
Yes.
about that.
Yeah. So this is
Masterclass with Dr. Kat.
let's go.
Yeah.
This is an experience that I realized that I had as I've been helping and supporting other people throughout the years, is that my connection to my daughter was through the filter of anxiety, and anxiety was in the way of our connection. So everything I saw for her, for me, my relationship with her was anxiety first and then us. So almost like if I can, I'm going to try and think of a specific example to tie it to. Like, okay, I lived in San Francisco. We lived near Golden Gate Park. I could just like pop her in the stroller and walk. But in order to walk there was a couple of kind of busy intersections. So I could maybe have an idea, like it would be nice to like go on a walk today. But then almost immediately after that, I would get really intense, intrusive thoughts. So then I'm there in a battle with myself. I just want to like go on a walk with her and show her like birds and trees and, stuff like that.
Get some fresh air.
All that stuff. But now all of the anxiety is there between us and between us doing that. It took sometimes a long time to get out of the house because of this. I would be like worried, I pack it. And then you start like focusing on ridiculous details that aren't that necessarily like, should I bring 2 diapers or 3 diapers? Or like, like you're like over preparing all of these other details just to go on a like what should be a simple walk through the park. Yeah. But now there's all of these complicating factors. I'm trying to control everything I can possibly control because I'm actually afraid of the intrusive thought that I just had. Now I can't just like go on a walk with her. If I make it out the door, sometimes I wouldn't, but if I would make it out the door, it's anxiety. And so I'm not present. I'm doing the thing, but I'm not like, let's hang out and look at these birds and I'll look at those flowers. I might be acting that. Like there's, it's sort
proficiently, in fact.
Oh yeah, for sure. On the outside, nobody knows what is going on in my head. They might see me doing the like, oh, hey, baby girl, look at this flower and all that stuff. That's me acting. That's me performing motherhood. Because that's what I want to do. I want to have that connection with her. I want to have that experience with her. But I have to, there's like all these levels of processing that are happening. There's like anxiety me, that's like, holy shit, like, what am I, all that stuff. Then there's me performing. And then there's me watching all of this happen.
And analyzing whether or not you're doing it all good enough.
Yeah. It's like being in the minutia and the meta at the same time.
Yes.
All the time.
Wow.
It's just.
Yes.
And that's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
This is making me realize how many experiences exactly like what you're talking about, a mundane activity on any given day. There were so many layers of what was happening inside my head that made basic connection very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like totally like a therapy sesh for me too right now because I'm yeah.
Be sure to send us a bill. Just kidding. You're not licensed in the states in which we live. That's not how this works.
Sorry. This one's pro bono. But I mean, I think that there are probably many people that, have experienced the same thing as all 3 of us, just in terms of like how I really, things are getting in the way of me connecting. Like I'm hyper focusing on these other things, or ideas are just flying into my brain and I'm just not able to have the experience that I want. And it's not anything that we've done. It's something that's just happening and going on for us. And
it's little trauma pollen still stuck. Gotta like
flying around.
Get
it off. Get out of here. Yeah.
It does get in the way. It's a barrier, and trying to connect through the anxiety takes so much effort and energy that it's like, for me, if with my particular neuroses, I guess, like, how is that ever going to feel like enough? It can't feel good.
That makes so much sense.
So you're
to
like
me.
working your ass off to like in some way. And it's so much work to be anxious.
And then you're tired all the time. Duh.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Exactly what you said. It's not like you're trying to not be connected. You're trying really hard, but you have to push so much stuff aside just to do basic day-to-day things.
I feel like social media today would describe what we're talking about as like you only have so many spoons in a day. I've seen this as like a metaphor. Like this is like your mental and emotional energy for the day. When you have a new baby, you're spending that mental and emotional energy on intrusive thoughts that you can't control, but also can't get rid of, combined with then like hypervigilance as a result. And now you're trying to perform being a normal parent. Like, well, those are all your spoons.
Yeah.
Who's making dinner? Does anyone have any plan for after about 2 p.m.? Because I'm done. I got nothing left. Like
that's pretty much right.
Another really hilarious meme from social media that has resonated with me for a long time is like trying to clean the house with kids is like trying to brush your teeth while eating an Oreo. But you could insert anything here, trying to perform motherhood like through the lens, like through anxiety, or insert perinatal mental health complication here.
Yeah.
You can't brush your teeth and eat an Oreo at the same time. Sorry, not going to happen.
Right.
You're not going to get what you're looking for.
You're going to look like a hot mess.
Your toothbrush is going to be nasty.
Going to be gross.
Ew. 0 stars. Do not recommend.
Oh my God. I'm ready for the lightning round. I want to get into other shenanigans.
Kat, are you ready? Are you consenting to a lightning round? It might not be quick. Might be kind of long. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, first up, I know that this podcast and yours are obviously like tied for number one in your heart.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What is your other favorite podcast? If you'd like to recommend something, doesn't have to be perinatal mental health like related. It could be, whatever.
It's actually not. Because I am like in perinatal mental health world all the time, every day with clients, and I am hearing stories and healing sessions and all this stuff. I go kind of the opposite direction.
Okay.
So
here we go.
I listen to regularly Armchair Expert.
Yeah, love that one.
Yeah, that's like, I don't feel right if I haven't listened to all of the episodes. It's just part of my day and my week. That one, and then Smartless with
you and Wendy. Do you guys text after the episode and discuss everything? Because in my head, that's how it happens. Well, you should.
No, but we should.
I think that they had a show, like a series, like they went on tour or something. I don't know. Like Amazon Prime. You saw it.
I went to one of their live shows. Yes.
Are you kidding?
I went to the one with Kevin Hart. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was in LA. It was really, really fun.
That is cool.
Yeah, it was great. So I listen to comedy podcasts. The other one is like Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. That guy is just hilarious. So when in doubt, I just reach for something funny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a good like mood booster.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Okay, next up, are you currently binge watching or reading anything really good, preferably watching for me? Because I don't have capacity to read right now.
Ooh,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. It's hard for me to read too. I'm pretty sure I'm a little undiagnosed ADD. So,
well,
when I try and read, I like lose track fully, or I get really tired, and I'm just like,
you just kind of fall asleep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the one episode I did on my podcast with a woman who specializes in ADHD and perinatal mental health, when she was talking through the stuff, I was like, oh, okay. So this episode is becoming about me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's like
ADHD.
What were we talking about?
I forgot.
I saw this meme that was like, I went online to look at to find out symptoms of ADHD, and did you know that elephants can't jump?
No, right?
I was like, might be me. So there's like a constant rotation of stuff in my house. We will watch all of the Marvel movies from beginning to end, all of Harry, like in order.
Yes.
All of Harry Potter.
Yes.
Lord of the Rings. But if I'm like on my own, I tend to go back to stuff that I've watched before sometimes. Like I just finished watching Schitt's Creek again.
Okay, love
and that
it.
was great. And The Good Place. Have you guys seen The Good Place?
Oh, yeah.
So I love that.
Whole mother forking shirt ball. What is it?
Mother forking shirt balls.
Shirt balls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be a hashtag for this episode. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I am one
Just joking.
mother forking shirt ball.
Shirt ball.
What's your best parenting hack?
Best parenting hack.
Yeah.
What I think having like a teenager and a 10-year-old, I find the best time to have a conversation about things that are a little bit more serious is in the car when they are not facing me or they don't have to look at me. When there's like parallel conversation.
You're doing your thing.
Yes.
They're like looking out the window and pretending like this is not their life. This is not happening, but maybe they're willing to, participate a little bit.
I have found that I mean, that's useful for older kids, but I think it's useful for younger kids too, because there's not the intensity of like sitting down and having a conversation. It's just, you can like, I'll like lob out a question like, so I heard blah, 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 and kind of get a temperature reading on that. And if I feel like I'm getting shut down, I'm like, all right, today's not the day.
Cool.
But sometimes it works.
I think the same is true if you play video games with your kids. Because it's again a no like eye contact, like they feel like they're being watched in their response.
Totally.
Also, I just need an excuse to play video games. So, okay, what is one thing that today you wishes that you could like hop into a little time machine, go back and tell pre-recovery you? Like early days, what would you whisper in your own ear?
Mm-hmm. I don't know how to put it totally into words. It's kind of more of a feeling of like saying everything's going to be okay isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's not the thing. But like really believing that I'm okay, me as a person.
Right. Because again, you thought this was a character flaw. There was something wrong with you fundamentally.
I'm failing. I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't be like this. I am supposed to have it all figured out, blah, blah, blah. All this perfection nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I could say it to myself, but like really believe it.
Yeah. Kat, what's one way that you're going to show yourself a little radical love today?
I am... I'm going to allow myself to do nothing. Just like sit on the couch with my son and watch Eternals.
That is radical because there is so much pressure to be doing all the things all the time. And am I doing enough? Yeah. You know what?
Yeah. My antidote is to like do nothing and be okay with it. If your goal is to do nothing and you're sitting there the whole time, like I should be doing something, then you're not like chilling out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So guilt-free rest. That's my jam.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
Dr. Ken.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you take your water? And I say this with the full knowledge that when I first ran into you at the conference in Houston, we rendezvoused in front of the like water jug that had all of the fun flavors because there were like pieces of fruit like floating in it. How do you take your water?
Yeah. So I always cold.
Okay.
And always in some sort of bottle with a straw. Because for some reason, that's the only way that I'll actually drink water is if there's a straw involved.
Okay.
Which is weird. But I'll half the time just ice cold plain. And the other half I put electrolyte powder in. Because I'm like near constantly dehydrated for whatever reason. Even though I drink water. But I put electrolyte flavored powders in to keep myself hydrated and healthy.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, we just got real personal. Thanks for sharing, Kat.
You're welcome.
Kat, if any of our listeners are interested in finding more about your podcast or
following you on socials.
Yeah, following me on social media, how can they get a hold of you?
Social media, I'm at Mom and Mind. That's true on Instagram and TikTok. And I think Facebook is at Mom and Mind Podcast. And I think I'm on Threads too. But I mostly live on Instagram if I have to pick one, because it's a lot to manage a lot of social. So
It is.
that, and of course, the Mom and Mind podcast you can find on any podcast platform. Just type in Mom and Mind and it will be there. You can go to my website. You can either type in momandmind.com or you can type in Well Mind Perinatal. And that is my full website that has where my podcast lives and info about me, and also online courses that I offer and stuff like that.
A lot of really awesome stuff. So check it out.
Thank y'all.
Check it out. We'll put a link to all those things in the show notes. Emily, you want to take us out?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you going to sing? Are you going to
No.
sing? Okay.
Emily, hang on just a second. Ready?
I don't sing. I am afraid of singing. It's a fear.
She's starting to sing. She's getting more comfortable with it.
Okay.
It's not my thing. Okay. Dr. Kat, thank you so much for being here today. This is, again, another fun full circle moment for me because we connected many years ago when we were both leading climbs. We were like baby new moms trying to figure out what was happening in our brains. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you for all of the work that you do in all of the spaces that you do it, because it's a lot and you're doing all the things. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I could be here with you guys, and love that you're doing this, and yeah, keep it going.
Thanks for tuning in to the I Am One podcast. Check out today's show notes where we'll drop links to all the important things that we mentioned in this episode. Please consider sharing about I Am One on social media and following and rating our show wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. It only takes a minute of your time and, well, that'll help our collective mission of bringing resources and local support to folks worldwide. From everyone here at PSI, thanks again for listening.